Welcome to Wild and Exposed, your number one adventure, nature, and outdoor photography podcast. Wild and Exposed is hosted by Mike Amaro, Ron Hayes, Jason Loftus, and Mark Raycroft. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome to another episode of Wild and Exposed podcast. You've got myself, Ron Hayes, Mark Raycroft, Jason Loftus coming to you this week. And we are going to do a little bit of catch up. We've had some time to get out in the field. We've had Snowmageddon. We haven't had time to get out in the field in Canada, apparently. But we'll let Mark talk about that.
I'll just listen in on your adventures.
Well, we did get out a little bit, and I've seen a lot of information coming out. I'm excited. It's almost time for the bears to pop out. There may be a few starting to show up here very soon. So I'm excited to hear the news and kind of watch the progress of that. The grouse started strutting, and then all of a sudden we got 2 feet of snow in places. Some places got 3, and a few places even got 4 feet and above. Not quite 5 feet. So it's been a good wet spring, which we very much needed, because the adventure that Jason and I were able to get out on, that we'll talk about here in a little bit, as I was driving back, it almost looked like a dust bowl in places. There was like dust storms blowing across the highway, and it was a little bit disheartening, to be honest. But we're not going to see any of that for probably a couple months or better, because it is nice and wet now. How are you guys doing? Mark, how's Canada?
Oh, it's fine. Things are fine. Spring arrived this week. All our snow is gone except in the forest where it's sheltered or shaded from the sun. So that's welcome. The temperatures are all above freezing for the most part for daytime highs. The birds are coming back. I don't know. The older I get, the more exciting it is each year to see the various songbird species coming back, and you hear the call, you see them. That's been fun. It's, the past year, outdoor activities have been so popular. Gear is something in short supply for a lot of adventure stuff. So I've been prepping for later this spring's interior canoeing and photography and camping trips. So I picked up a new canoe. It's the first, well, actually, I bought a canoe probably 15 years ago for $300 from a neighbor. That's a tank. If it was at your cottage or something, you had to push it 4 feet to shore, no problem. But no good for portaging or interior wilderness trips. So I stepped up and bought a Kevlar Fusion canoe that weighs 38 pounds, so it's pretty sweet for the idea of portaging. And as much as it might seem on my social media feeds, especially the Adventure Algonquin one, that I love canoeing, I actually don't. I never thought I'd buy this caliber of a canoe, but it gets me out there, and I love so much about the experience, in the wilderness, the camping, the campfires back on the remote lake, and the loons, the stars, everything that happens once back there. The actual canoe trip, it's a good workout at this stage of life, and I like keep pushing my boundaries, and so it's fun for that. But the past few weeks have been gearing up. I got a new food barrel, not necessarily bear proof, but close to it, and we hang that between 2 trees in the interior when we're camping. But it's a backpack, so everything fits in that, and on the back, comfortable waist support straps, all that kind of stuff, and freeze-dried meals to prep for these adventures. So that's what I've been doing as springs come along, because actually when I went to get the canoe, I phoned the company, and I was talking with Sean James from My Self-Reliance, and planning this out, saying, hey, Sean, what would you recommend? And I know he's dialed in, so he recommended a canoe. I called the company, and they said, absolutely, they'd be happy to have one ready for me by the end of July. That's how much of demand, whether it's bicycles, mountain bikes, anything outdoorsy, it's in short supply. But a friend of mine found this one canoe at a store in Ottawa, so I actually bought it online and picked it up 10 days after that. So that's kind of been what's going on. But spring's coming along quickly. I've been watching the internet, see what's going on for you guys. I cringe. Yeah.
Well, it's springtime in the mountains, right, or in the north. That's when we get the vast majority of our moisture through the year, is in the spring. So we welcome it, but it does shut things down for a little while. Supposedly there's a 9-foot drift on the interstate, and they sent all the rotary plows, like the big snow blowers. They sent them all south because they were projected to get much more snow than we are. And so they didn't have any rotary plows, so they're trying to clear this big 9-foot drift with front end loaders, and it's taken some time. So the interstate, they don't, in the U.S., the interstate that's the crossroads, right? That's how you get products from A to B. For the most part, there's a railroad, but the interstate is where most products are shipped. And they rarely shut it down for 12 hours. They try to get it open as quickly as they can, and it's been shut down for almost 3 days now. Wow. So it was a significant storm. I haven't seen one like this since I was a kid, and we had, you'd have 3 feet of snow, but you had to get out there to feed on the ranch and the farm. You had to get to the animals, so we would always bust out the 1971 snowmobiles and get after it, which I did not purchase, by the way. They're about the same age as me, but I wasn't old enough to buy one at that time. How about you, Jason?
Sorry, Jason, just quickly, can we say that on our podcast? The same age as you? Do you do the math? What just happened?
Mm-hmm.
Hey?
Yeah. Well,
since our last podcast?
Just turned half a century since the last
right
podcast,
on.
Since we were all together last, and I'm not super excited about it, but it's not the agony that I anticipated it being when I was younger.
Oh, it's a new 40. That's what you tell yourself when you hit 50. You just say that over and over for a day or so.
People can say that all they want, but it still feels like 50.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thanks. Jason, how's Utah?
It's 65 degrees and partly cloudy and mostly sunny, depending on the day. And spring feels like it's here, and we just keep getting missed by these storms, which is kind of crazy. We thought, usually when Colorado and Wyoming get hit, Utah gets hit too, but for whatever reason we've missed it. So the southern part of the state got some of it, but not much. But yeah, it's actually feels like spring here. When the time changes, it's usually it's kind of an indicator for most of us, right, that it's spring's in the air and temps are changing. And but yeah, just it's really nice here, and I've been getting out and trying to enjoy that and take advantage of that, chasing some waterfowl photography with my buddy Harlan. We can talk more about that maybe, but just one of the most difficult things I've chased in quite a while. It's been fun. It's been very, very challenging, and a lot of time and effort put into it to try to get a couple of shots that might be usable. And but it's been a fun process. So learned a ton for sure.
Yeah, one of the barometers of spring for me is when I hear my first meadowlark, and that has not happened. It's either been the wind's blowing 50, 60, 70 miles an hour, or it's been snowing like crazy for long enough that I haven't heard one yet. So I've got to, hopefully, I hate the wind, but when a storm like this happens and it warms up quick and all that snow goes away, if the wind isn't blowing, it's going to be a month before we can get back out in the field because the roads will be so muddy. But so I do kind of hope for some wind, and we do have warm temperatures. I was trying to get the forecast on the crane migration in Nebraska, the sandhill crane migration, because one of my goals this year was to get some whooping cranes on video. And they said that, with all this moisture, they've already had to release enough water in Wyoming that the sandbars are covered up. And if you've ever seen the crane migration, the sandbars are where the cranes roost overnight. So when there's no sandbars, then of course they're more susceptible to predation because they've got to roost out in the fields and they just don't stay around as long. They tend to head north a little earlier. And with this storm, we're obviously not going to be able to maintain our reservoirs at max capacity with all the moisture that's going to come from this, because the headwaters got almost 60 inches of snow, and then everywhere downstream from there got at least 2 feet. So it's going to be a lot of water coming our way pretty quickly. So we'll see. This spring will be an interesting one.
Bet the grouse aren't too happy, especially those males. Waited all year to get on their legs and start going, and now what?
I know,
now
and
they're
they were
just
going already.
blanketed with snow, everything put on hard, cold paws.
Well, nothing puts it on pause like cold.
Right?
Yeah.
Cold shower. All right. So, Mark, what have you been up to besides just prepping? Have you gotten out at all? Because I called you and caught you out in the woods. Was that just a walk, or did you take your camera for a walk?
No, that was just a walk. The only camera with me was my phone on that. I try to get it in the woods every day for a walk if I'm here editing, just to hear things, see things, and move. You know, you only spend so long at a computer and have your eyes focus on a different distance other than 2 feet in front of you or me. So I was just out for a walk. I've been so busy editing and writing and marketing. It's that time of year. And, you know, when the snow melts as well, there are things definitely always worth photographing. But for my genre, my subjects, it's a really bland time of year. And so it's not one that finds me in the field. This is when I do a lot of my office work, and so that by late spring through fall, I have more freedom. So it's I've been at the computer. We did take off a day last week and went for a drive to look for saw-whet owls, and I did take my camera for a walk that day, and that's all it got was a walk. We walked past 2,000 cedar trees with about a foot of snow at that time, and we just went down along the lakeshore where the land sticks out into the lake further, where migratory birds hang up. We saw a lot of waterfowl. It's been a phenomenal year for waterfowl and owls in Ontario, and social media is just covered with it. It was a great year. Not for great grays as much. I think there were a few around. There were a ton of snowies. As per usual, more short-eared owls than you can count. Lots of eagles, but the waterfowl migration's in full swing right now. The ice has just gone out along shorelines especially. And so I see a lot of fantastic work of people right now from that. But for my markets, like you say, Jason, I mean, it's tricky, and you got to do it. You have to do it right. And I just don't have time right now, as much fun as it would be. I certainly enjoy seeing everybody's pictures of the waterfowl and the owls and the raptors. And so the saw-whet, they're just so freaking cute, right? So to find them, so Pilly and I spent an afternoon walking and hoping to find them, and they're all around. I mean, people they don't post the specific location, but they're out there one of these times. But yeah, that's the only wildlife outing I've done recently.
Jason, that's a good segue into yours. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just interested on the saw-whet. I think maybe worth just chatting about a little bit, but I think I've seen and heard recently, and I don't follow the owls super close like a lot of folks do. I enjoy photographing them when I get an opportunity. I love it. But I think a lot of folks are starting to not post, even like on iBird and stuff like that, locations for owls specifically because of all the attention they've been getting lately. And I know they had some challenges up in Yellowstone and Tetons last year with some of that. And, you know, just the critters getting a lot of pressure from all the photographers and the interest there. But yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that a lot of folks are not posting those locations. So unless you know somebody, you know, you're probably not going to, or if you find them on your own, either way, then you're not going to probably have much luck. But
there are hot spots, but yeah, for the past few years, people discourage it. posting. But yeah, there are places that are pretty well renowned to go. I just don't have the time. I mean, we have nesting barred and great horned on our property. The great horned, they've been in the same tree the past 2 or 3 years, but it's quite a ways up, and I don't bother. I love hearing them. Some nights they're right by the house, but I just don't. There's only so many things that I can. I mean, yes and no, but market as far as photography, and it's a different subject. It's still wildlife, it's still nature, but and it's fun to do, no doubt. It's just a time thing.
Yeah, no, I understand for sure.
Super popular. Owls, people love owls. Clearly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So to answer your question, Ron, yeah, just to get into a little bit more of maybe the waterfowl stuff I've been doing, and Mark hit the nail on the head. And this is something, I've done some waterfowl. I love waterfowl. If you follow my page, you've seen some of my waterfowl, but most of the time I'm getting single ducks here and there, maybe pairs, some geese, and it's mainly mallards and wood ducks. So I've really been wanting the last couple of years to broaden my portfolio with my waterfowl, and to trying to get into some pintails, gadwalls, teal, redheads, just on canvasbacks, on and on, scaup, just to broaden the whole portfolio. But so we do have a lot of those birds that come through here, and they come back through the springtime, obviously on the migration back north. And I just really like the idea of trying to capture some courtship flights. And it's something that I've messed with a little bit last year, but didn't had some success with just some blue sky type images, if you will. But I really have this vision in my head of what a really good waterfowl image looks like of a courtship flight, and I've seen some out there. But as it's interesting, and Harlan and I were talking, we got looking through some of the photographers that we follow, some of the really good waterfowl guys that are out there, and to be quite honest, there's not a lot of guys that have a broad variety of courtship flight type images. So and I've had a couple of guys that were nice enough to reach out to me actually and talk to me a little bit about that as I was stressed or portraying my frustrations in some of my posting and that. But so at least I was feeling better about the fact that I'm not as dumb as I thought I was, and that this really is as hard as I think it is. And but yeah, just lots of days in the field, and you got to be there before light. You can't push birds off. You got to try to avoid that as much as possible because they get wary. They've been shot at for the last 3-4 months all throughout the whole country on their migration path, and now they're heading home and they're still stressed out and that from that kind of stuff, and they're wary anyways. So just getting the hide right, getting the background proper, getting the good location that the light works well, and you get some good backdrops and good background other than just blue sky, all that, and then to have the weather work, the light come together, the wind not be too dramatic. All these factors have to come together, and just and to be quite honest, Harlan's put in probably, no joke, close to 15 days doing this over the last month or so. And I've been fortunate to get out with him for probably 6 or 7 of those days. So those many days of committed time and effort and I think we both feel like we walked away with maybe, 2 or 3 images that were, might be workable, and did not get the image that we had in our heads. Right. So more work to do. We're going to still stick at it. We've got a little bit more time here. The birds will be coming through, I think, for the next week or two before it's over. So yeah, looking forward to doing more of that. But boy, I'll tell you, like you mentioned too, Mark, anytime you go on a shoot, right? Everybody can relate to this. I think you go out and you're in a situation and you go, wow, that didn't work as well as I thought. And this gear might make this a little better if I had this gear. And then it goes down this rabbit hole where you start to buy this different gear, and you start to, well, maybe I need this, maybe I need that. So it's not just the getting out in the field, it's the, gear acquisition and trying to make it as easy as possible and as comfortable as possible while you're out there trying to do some of these things. So yeah, anyways, that's what I've been up to.
I was talking to Ray Hennessy, who's primarily a bird photographer on the East Coast. We've had him, he does a wildlife photo chat. We've had him on the show. Probably have him on the show again. I was just a guest on his podcast, which will come out in late March. But Ray was talking about, going after waterfowl versus, like warblers and songbirds and that kind of thing, and talking about just how difficult it is because you can be completely concealed, but just that little tiny bit of movement, and all of a sudden it might not push them off, but it'll push them away from the bank far enough that they're out of range for the camera or for the lens. So waterfowl is no joke. And he was talking about how many times he's gone out with one species in mind and then had to audible go to another species because the one that he, had scouted out for the last week and a half, 2 weeks, just wasn't cooperative or didn't show up for whatever reason. So it is difficult.
Yeah, and you just made me think of something. Sorry, Ron, but to add to the variables there. So here in Utah, we have quite a bit of marshland out there because of the Great Salt Lake, and that's why it's such a great stopover point. But there's probably 5 or 6 different refuges up here in the north area where the birds like to congregate. So you literally go out and do some scouting and say, oh, yep, there's a bunch of pintails and teal in at X location, and you go, okay, cool, I'm gonna go check it out. So you get your stuff, you go out the next morning. Well, the birds have moved; they're not there anymore. And I mean, it's I'm laughing and I'm showing some of my frustration, I think, but it's just, I'll tell you, boy, just as soon as you think you got it figured out, to your to Ray's point, they just throw an audible. You have to throw an audible and try something different and go, well, we're here. There are some birds here. Let's see what we can pull out of the day. But now it's like we need to get out of here at a certain time and go scout out for tomorrow because today didn't work out. Now where'd they go, and how much time and energy and gas you're going to put into finding them? And it's tough. So,
yep.
Ray, I feel your pain.
So we did get out though. Go ahead, Mark. Before we get into that, ask
Jason about how he's liking. And again, this isn't necessarily a Canon or an R5 promotion. I'm holding my breath on the new Nikon Rumor Trail myself, but shooting mirrorless on those and the autofocus tracking. Are you loving that, or how's it working?
So, interestingly enough, it's a great question. I've actually been using my Nikon, my D850 and my 500 with the 1.4 on it because I really do need the reach. But with the Canon, I would use the 1-500. I have used it for waterfowl and it's worked great. The tracking's amazing. But I just don't have a good prime yet, right? And I'm kind of holding my breath and waiting to see what happens and who's gonna, not come out on top, but which way I'm gonna go with. It's gonna be Canon or Sony more than likely. But right now I'm leaning towards Canon, but I just want to see if I buy a new prime, it's gonna be the new RF mount, right? Mm-hmm. So, but to your point, yeah, I didn't use it much just because I needed the reach. And so, that 1.4 with the 500 gives me 700 millimeters, which is kind of nice to have with these birds the way they've been. So,
right. Okay, cool.
Yeah. But yes, Ron, we did get out. We actually got out together, which was kind of fun.
Which hasn't, it's been a while. I mean, we got out in the elk woods, but it wasn't necessarily together. We were just in the same areas. But this trip went out specifically to get out to Yellowstone on your invitation, or your extended invitation to me through some friends of yours, and turned out to be a pretty fair little trip.
Yeah.
It has already paid for itself, if I'm being honest. So nice. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But we went to West Yellowstone, Montana. Jumped on a snow coach from there for a couple days, and then went north. But went north into northern Yellowstone, where you can drive in, and had a really good day there. You went on, I believe we can talk about that too. But what a trip!
Yeah, I thought those coaches were well worth the money we spent and the energy and time we put into them, and ended up having some pretty incredible encounters, which we've, I think a lot of folks have seen and heard about some of them, like with the pine marten and the squirrel, and some of those just once in a lifetime type encounters that you probably never. Matter of fact, I'm trying to remember his name. It's making me mad that I'm not remembering his name right now. But one of the folks that I've been, friends with on Instagram for a long time, and he's a guide, and he's a guide up there on snowmobiles. He's been guiding in that park out of West Yellowstone for 18 years, and he's never seen anything like that. Daily trips throughout the winter, and never has encountered something like that. So he was making the point about how special that was and how cool it was to see, right there, point blank range, right off the side of the road, just for 40 minutes, just went on and on and on. At some point, I think we all were just stopped photographing and videoing and just kind of watched, because we'd gotten a lot of of photos and video.
It turned into half the crowd cheering for the marten and half the crowd cheering for the squirrel.
It did too. Yeah, there was quite a crowd gathered for sure. But yeah, that was a fun trip. It was well worth the time and energy we spent. And
right off the road, and there was snow machines that everybody was traveling back in, had to be out of the park by a certain time, and was traveling back in when somebody spotted this. We didn't spot it. They had already had it identified when we showed up, and I don't know how long it was going on before we got there, but it sounds like the entire thing was probably about an hour. We were only there for, half of that, roughly?
Probably, yeah.
But
yeah,
it was amazing. I've never... I mean, you always look for predator-prey relationships and behaviors, and I've never seen one on that small a scale like that.
Yeah.
It was just
to have that time.
What's that, Mark?
So to have the time to collect all the images you want and then the video. So our listeners, there'll be links in the show notes, but they're already up on Instagram. You can see a photo on the Wild and Exposed feed on Instagram, and then Jason, I think was it a post or a story? I think it was a post that you put up a video.
Photos.
Was it a series of photos?
Yeah.
Oh, I enjoyed them so much. I flipped through, looked like a video. Okay, but there's the one. It's like, I mean, it's almost like they're playing. It's like the squirrel, not really stressed, but it's so close to its end.
The squirrel wasn't stressed at all. That thing knew exactly what it was. It was just going to wear him out.
To witness that, and a couple of the images. There's one where I think the pine marten had its paw right at the squirrel's tail or something, like almost contact.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there was a couple times where that marten got real close, and but it was crazy. To your point, like that squirrel, he was just like, I got all day, and I got way more energy, and you're too slow, and you're not gonna win this. And to speak to it a little bit, it was hilarious because the marten kept falling out of the tree into the snow after he'd get tired, and he'd sit down there at the base of the tree and rest, and then he'd hurry back up the tree, and the squirrel would just be waiting for him, like, okay, let's go. And that squirrel was always a move ahead of him, a second ahead of him, and just that marten was trying to trick him to go in one direction and cutting back the other way, and that squirrel was on top of it. And finally the marten gave up, and that squirrel, I'm not joking, I posted a photo, but it was just like he was proud as punch and was like, that's right, you just go ahead and go away. Yeah. Chattered and sat there and posed like, yep, this is my tree. And
the downside of going on a snow coach is you don't have room for everything. And one of the things that I left behind after the first day was my video tripod, because it just took up so much space. And that encounter, it broke my heart. There was a snow machine group or tour that was parked there, and I talked one couple into allowing me to use their snow machine for a rest, and I got some video with the R5, some 4K video with the 2-4, and it turned out pretty good. But there's, as still as you think you're being, that's why you've got to be on a tripod, because with a long lens, every little bit of movement is going to be exacerbated, and you're going to see, all the impact from that movement. And even though it wasn't much, and I thought I had a dead still rest, I still was moving just a little bit. So it's, it's usable for an Instagram story, and it's good for an Instagram story, that kind of thing, or a reel. When I'm able to, I still cannot get the new Instagram app. My phone won't upload it. So I can't do reels yet. So I'm working on getting a new phone. That's going to have to be the solution, unfortunately. But the images that you got, and you would just, if it wasn't for the R5, I will say I'm now sold on the autofocus on the R5, because it would pick them up as soon as they came around the tree. It was locked. And if it wasn't for that, I don't know how many of those images I would have gotten. But I did cheat a little bit. I just increased my depth of field and basically focused on the front of the tree, knowing that I was at least going to get them as they're circling, coming around the tree. But it actually turned out that camera picked up the movement pretty good. Oh. But it's something that I probably won't ever see again in my lifetime. I mean, like you said, Jason, there's a guy that's been doing that for 18 years, and he's been in an area that's got him. And never seen it. I probably will never see it again, and just to have that memory is
such a unique experience.
Yeah,
nice
well,
light.
it was overcast.
It looks nice,
but it was even light for sure. Yeah, it wasn't like you were dealing with shadows and highlights. That cloud cover actually made it doable, because it didn't matter which side of the tree they were on; they were evenly lit. So, as far as that goes, that was a positive. But it was a little bit dark. You had to kind of run your ISO up just a hair. I think I was at about 640 for most of that. I was still able to be at 1,000th of a second, which is fine. Those cameras handle 640, no problem. I think, actually, the D850, I think native ISO is 640. So it's great image quality at that ISO.
Mine's at 800 most of the time.
Yeah. There's no reason to shy away from
handheld. Yeah, that's great. And you already squeezed in a pro tip: focusing on the tree, increasing your depth of field. If you had the light, just got one in there already.
Should have saved that, because Mike's not here today. Mike is on assignment, by the way, which is why he's not with us. And I couldn't buy a pro tip from him, so I should have saved that one.
We'll let you count it.
But earlier, I mean, that was our second day.
So yeah, the first day we had a pine marten encounter too, which is, again, these critters are around. They're not like they're unusual. They're plentiful. They're out there, but they're generally pretty shy, and they don't generally stick around long. And both of our encounters with these pine martens, right?
And they're fast.
And
they go up a tree and they're like, "See you later." What do you do?
Well, usually. But the first encounter we had, he sat and gave us pose after pose, and just went from branch to location to different location, and we were all just like, that made the whole trip worth it right there, right? We had a pretty good first day too, and the second day, just that topped it off with that encounter. We had some really neat bison encounters along the river with some good frosty bison, and then that was the second day, and then the third day we kind of made an audible back to the point of making a decision as a group, and we jumped in vehicles. And
before we do that, though, I gotta give a shout out to Terry Hansen for sacrificing himself so that everybody else could get images of pine marten
on the first day. Yeah, that's right.
First day.
We want to talk about that a little bit. Really embarrassing.
Terry, we had been told where this pine marten was, so Terry was kind of walking down this trail toward that area, and just lost his feet, took a digger, and as soon as he went down, pine marten popped out right behind this tree. And I'm sitting there shooting. Terry's still laying over there.
Yeah, let me back up for a second. Hang on. You're missing a key part here. So Terry had ate it and as soon as Terry fell, it spooked the marten, made him go, "What was that?" And he came out of the tree, and Ron, without missing a beat, was on his knee and blaring away. And poor Terry's over there rolling around on the snow, can't get up.
Hey, I will say that I had an incident where I was rolling around in the snow and couldn't get up either. And
that's true.
The first time, nobody helped. The second time, Jason filmed me for a little while, and then he helped.
Yeah. I couldn't help but film you a little bit.
Yeah. But yeah, Terry did take a digger, and I had no sense of chivalry. I was there to
Well,
get
and
images.
there was 2 or 3 of us that were still on the bus when this all went down because we
Yeah.
were thinking, yeah, they're not going to see the marten. So we saw this all go down, and we obviously were bailing off the bus trying to get
But
get out there
still,
and get
to be
active. But
fair, everybody's comment was, "We saw you shooting. That's why we got out. Didn't get out because Terry
100%.
fell. Got
That's
out because I
fair.
was shooting."
That's fair. And of course, nobody yelled back and said, "Hey, we got the marten here, guys." They just, started shooting. So
Yeah, well,
get off your butt and get off the
that's
bus.
right.
No, that was a pretty awesome couple days, honestly, in the park.
It was good. Yep.
Yeah.
Day 3, however. Well, day 1 I can't complain about because I got the series of shots that have paid for
Paid
the
for the
trip.
trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But day 3, I've never seen anything like it in the park, and I've gone there in the winter. I don't know how many times, but I've never seen anything like that. And we didn't have any wolves real
And
close.
tune in next week for part 2 of this podcast.
Yeah,
Right.
we didn't have any wolves real close, but by my count, I think we saw a total of 31 that day.
Oh, as far as how many we saw, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was a pack of 27 that was way up on a ridge, had a bison, 3 bison surrounded. But as I was watching that, I videoed them. I don't even know why. It was so far up there. But when I was watching the video, they were, again, you're dealing with probably 2 miles plus of distance. But the wolves were all in through the bison, around the bison. The bison didn't seem to be bothered at all or concerned at all. And there were some of them bedded down on the ridge, and then there were some of them right there by the bison, just kind of waiting for a reaction, it looked like. But the bison kind of had a little bald knob, and they weren't going to move off of it and get in the deep snow. They were comfortable on that bald knob, and they had feed. No reason to move. Give those wolves an opportunity. I don't know how that situation played out. If the wolves waited them out, I'm sure they got the opportunity later, but while we were there, nothing happened. But it was just neat to see the packs have grown so much. Typically they'll be in the teens. And there was the Junction pack, which is the one that we saw, had 27 wolves in it. And then the Wapiti pack, they said, was in the 30s. It was 30 something because they've been hunting bison and they need more bodies to be able to be successful hunting bison. So and we didn't see the whole Wapiti pack, or I didn't for sure. I know Jason, you stayed, but we only saw 2.
Yeah.
And it was right away, first thing in the morning, we saw wolves coming into the park.
Yeah.
And then we stopped. There was a coyote down below the road, and we stopped to see if we could get anything done with that. And there was, at first, I thought it was a wolf howled, and then all these coyotes sounded off. So I thought, well, maybe it's just a coyote. But then I had several other people tell us later that it was definitely wolves that sounded off first. There was 2 of them, and then I don't know how many coyotes. Coyotes always sound like it's more because they're yippy, and their voices go up and down, high and low, and so it sounds like there's more of them than there actually is. But it sounded like there's 4 or 5 coyotes in the area, and I think by the end of the day we at least saw 3 that you could identify. So there may have been more up there.
3 coyotes?
In that area.
Oh, where the 2 were on the ridge.
Yeah. 2 on the ridge, 1 down below.
Yeah, for sure.
And there could have been more, like we said, but that area turned out to be pretty fruitful because those wolves came down there again in the afternoon. But we had kind of taken a drive through, all the way through the park, almost all the way. got some bison stuff, and looking at the images that the people who were not driving got, they got some pretty crazy bison images, next to the roads.
I feel your pain, buddy.
Yeah. Jason and I were driving, and those images weren't there to be had from the driver's seat for sure.
Yeah. But we did get some pretty cool encounters. That whole day was pretty fruitful, I thought.
Yeah.
Usually when you go to the park, and I think we've talked about this before, but in my experience, even in a winter trip, you like to do 2 or 3 days on a coach because you may have a day or two where you just don't even shoot a photo. It's just part of the deal. And so for us to hit it where we had 2 good days in the park on the coach was already just a win. And then to go to the north end, when I go to the north end, I generally like to spend 3, 4, 5 days if I can in the winter, because again, you're going to have days where you just don't see much. And to have a great day like that on that 3rd day, it just doesn't come together like that. So I feel like we were pretty fortunate overall, and just, we kept trying to stress to the folks that were with us how incredible this was and how fortunate we were to have don't come back to Yellowstone and expect this every time you come, because if you do, you're going to be sorely disappointed. But it was worth it for sure.
I did have the lucky charm there, Mark.
Which one is that, my friend?
So,
trying to get some flashbacks here.
The first day, we, it got kind of slow. And so I said, all right, it's time to change coats. Put the rally cap on. And so I changed coats, and all of a sudden we start having encounters again. We run into this pair of coyotes and had a great shoot with them. This bull bison, large, mature bull bison. Great shoot with him again. So then the second day, things are slow. So, well, it's time to change the coat. And I started with the other coat on that ended up being the lucky coat the first day. But then as soon as I changed the coat, boom, like 10 minutes later, we run into the pine marten. And then we were in the north end. And we had seen some coyotes. We'd seen wolves way off in the distance. We didn't really have any good shoots. And then we did get into some bison. On the way back, stopped to have lunch, and I said, I'm going to change coats. And we change coats, come back, and there's 2 wolves bedded right on top of this ridge. And we spent the remainder of the day with them, and we ended up getting video of breeding wolves, some good interactions. They were, again, a little bit too far to get tremendous images, but we had great interactions with them. Some good behavior stuff. But yeah, the coat did it.
So, no, it's not the coat. It's the changing of the coat. It's the changing of your
is.
clothes that did it. So you just have to bring your wardrobe, have at least 2 to 3 options, and when it gets quiet, you switch it up. Okay.
When we were with Barrett, all I did there was I just say, hey, we need to see this, and it would happen. The only thing that didn't happen on that trip that I asked for was cubs standing crawling up on the back of a sow. But I thought we were going to see it one day. It almost happened, and then the cub backed off. But anyway, yeah, the coat did it.
In all fairness, Ron did call it too. He didn't just change his coat and we had the experience. He said, "It's getting kind of slow. I think I'm going to change my coat. We need some luck." And I'm not joking. Every time it happened, it became a thing. We started telling him, "Ron, you need to change your coat."
So is this a Ron thing or is this a coat thing? So we're going to need our listeners to test this in the field. And switch coats and let us know if that's, or if this is just Ron and his charisma and his coats. That could be.
Are
we selling wild and exposed coats yet, guys?
Not yet.
Just kidding. So, hoodies.
Yeah. Well, it's always good fun when you're in the field with a group. You got to keep it light because there is going to be a lot of downtime. So, and I was kind of Debbie Downer for half of the trip anyway. So, it was fun to have some things we can look back and laugh at.
For sure.
So
Always.
Yeah.
That's the fun of sharing the trip with other people.
yeah.
It's why you don't invite me anymore.
Oh, you were invited.
Well,
You just
you would have been invited if you could sneak
100%.
across the border.
You can cross the border. It's just the isolation when I come back. That's still the
Oh,
case.
yeah.
It's a weird situation. You can hop on a plane and go anywhere, but when you come back, that's still that 14 days. But I don't even know if it's that long now, to be honest. But hopefully things will open up. Speaking of Barrett, I mean, I think he's planning. I hope that opens up for this summer. It's tight. I don't know as far as Lake Clark and those kinds of trips,
Yeah.
but we're all anxious to get out for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
To travel.
And there's,
we can all do stuff in our own area, which is good fortune for you guys.
There's the people like Barrett, Shane McGuire, and other photographers who count on that. Lisa Langell that we had, Ron Nieberge, count on those trips to pay the bills during the year. And it's tough. They put these demands on everyone, and it's tough to not be able to host those trips because it is a big part of their income. So I'm hopeful that now that some things have changed, maybe we can get back out in the field and those people can get back to their regular schedule. Well,
hopefully by sometime this summer that'll start to relax. And I mean, we were going to offer a caribou one this year. Shh, it's so close, but I just
it's risky.
Hard to know.
Because when you do those trips, most people don't know just how much. Like we looked at doing a trip to Svalbard. And to be able to book the boat, you got to make a down payment of almost $13,000 and then regular payments of $13,000 until the boat's paid for. So there's a lot that goes into this, and that's just one aspect of it. There's other.
How many regular payments of 13,000?
Yeah, I'm my head spinning here. I'm like, those, but that's for the whole boat.
That's
right?
For the whole boat. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
so
and a
it's
bunch
not
of people.
like the trip's not costing me that much,
right.
But that's what I would have to put down to be able to.
I'll come with you if you pay for that like that.
Well, I'm sure you would.
Sign me up.
Yeah. So most people don't realize what goes into all that, and when people have planned that and then have to cancel, then the venues don't really care why the cancellation took place. That is their income. They take those as a security deposit to be able to save it, and so it was a big loss for folks this last year.
Well, and with COVID, right, there's a lot of folks, airlines, hotels, a lot of places were making exceptions early on. Mm-hmm. But it didn't take long for folks to basically those exceptions went away, and if you had to cancel your flight or you had to cancel your booking after whatever rules were in place, they were not, it was your loss. So, I mean, that obviously keeps all of us from committing too much to some of these longer term things, and which makes it hard to book these longer term things because you have to book them in advance to get what you need. But yeah, hopefully they'll open the borders up here soon, and we can get back to some normalcy.
If things
some traveling
continue to improve, hopefully by this summer,
there'll
be enough going on, and this fall will be somewhat of a return to normal, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But so let's do some. Go ahead,
so real
Jason,
quick.
Sorry.
So well, no, you're good. I just to kind of finish off that trip. I actually stayed one more day.
Oh yeah, that's right. And you still haven't told me about it. So I'm anxious to hear.
Yeah, it was kind of slow. So there you go. For the 4 days that I spent in the park, that last day, we still did get some images, but nothing crazy and nothing more, exciting than we had already experienced for sure. But yeah, it was there was some. It wasn't, and I'll just say this: it wasn't me, but there may have been some tickets involved for some folks, and there may have been some things like that occurred because of some pretty gung-ho situations, but I won't go into details just because it's not.
It wasn't him, but it may have been somebody who was trying to keep up with him.
Well, no, it wasn't a speeding ticket. It was just
different one.
Yeah.
Oh,
anyways.
That's not good. I got a speeding ticket.
Oh, did you? On that trip? You get speeding tickets all the time. Weren't
You
you a
know I
cop?
did.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I
how
don't.
does an ex-cop get speeding tickets?
No,
Don't you
he gets
still
them
have
all the time.
some
And he
kind of
was following
badge?
me. He was trying to keep up with me apparently, and
Because you
I
drive fast.
apparently I blew right through the where the
There was
cop
a
was.
change in speed. I was just watching the white Subaru ahead of me, not paying attention to the sign. And I was still going under the speed limit for the 65 mile per hour zone, but for the 45 that we apparently went through, I was exceeding.
And Jason was ahead of you, and they
Yeah.
nabbed you.
Yes.
Ah,
Well, he doesn't believe that I slowed down, but obviously I did because the cop
yeah.
did not pull me over.
Right.
No, it was fun. We had a good time. So 4 days, and that was one of those crazy days where I actually, because we were staying in West, so we had to get up at early, get all of our stuff out of the condo, get out of there, head north. So we left at like 3:30 in the morning. Spent the whole day in the park. Left the park at dark, and I think I got home about 2:30 a.m. on Monday. So that was almost 24 hours of being awake. And after the weekend that we'd had prior, let's just say I was pushing it and burning the candle at both ends a little too much, to the point where, and this just another little pro tip, I guess we'll use this as maybe as a pro tip, but it just for I do this all the time. We talk about it. I get a little bit crazy. I'll just drive all night and do that. And I'm getting older. um, I don't even know if we've talked about it on here, but I am a grandpa now, and the uh, the risk you put yourself at doing those things sometimes may not be worth it. I didn't have anything happen, but I got real tired, and I did pull over in a rest area and take about a 20-30 minute power nap about 20 minutes from home. That's how bad it was. I was feeling so drained. But I guess the point, or the point there is, if you are feeling tired and you're doing that kind of thing, just pull over.
Yeah.
It's not worth risking it. And that drowsy driving stuff is super dangerous. And I was getting to the point where I was going to start nodding off if I didn't. And that little power nap was enough to get me the last 20 minutes home without any issues. But yeah, what the things we do to chase this passion, right?
Exactly.
People drive a lot for all kinds of reasons, but yeah, we travel a lot and drive. It's very good advice. Just
Yeah.
I mean, again, this is all about amazing photography, but it's still photography, right?
Still just
There will be.
photography. Yep.
We want to be there for other days in the field, and no stress, no need to push things to that kind of. So yeah,
My plan was to stay with
I-
Jason for that extra day because we wouldn't, if we'd have followed our schedule, we would not have taken that third day and gone north. We would have been back on the snow coach. And so when we were able to get north, had a good day, I decided to just call it. Slept in the next morning when these guys took off and headed back north.
You probably slept in, had a nice warm breakfast, had a nice easy leisurely drive
did.
home.
Hung out
Hot
with
chocolate.
Terry, make sure he was okay from the fall.
Yep. Yeah. Love it.
No, we had a good visit, and then yeah, headed out. And actually, there was a snowmobile, an avalanche, and when I got to the top of the mountain, coming back home between Jackson and Dubois, so Togety Pass, we got shut down in the middle of the mountain, and I didn't see it initially, but then when they fired it back up again, they had a rescue helicopter up there to fly someone out.
Mm.
So that was interesting. Got a little video
think
of
this-
that too.
I think this last storm may be ripe for some good avalanches too, I'd imagine.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, as much snow as came down for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful in the backcountry.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Mark, you haven't gotten to say much, so let's let you kick
No.
off the pro tip.
There has been one or two podcasts where I felt like I might have said too much at times. So this is okay. This is okay. I enjoy hearing about your adventure. Wish I was along. I love the camaraderie, the fun, the pranks, the laughs. You know, it's I live for these trips in so many ways, but you guys are so bang on in that it's such a fun social time. It's hard to shut it down at the end of the day. And spring trips, when the days are long, like
Yeah.
we've done bears, you're filming so much, and then you get together and you socialize because no matter who it is out there, you're with your good friends. It's an opportunity to catch up and tell stories, and then the nights are cut short, and you have a 10-day trip. It's nice to have 2 days in there of just pouring rain or blizzard or something where you got to take it easy. Otherwise, there's that pressure to go, go, go. But it's fun to hear. And anybody listening, if you haven't looked at those pine marten pictures with the red squirrel, you've got to check it out. They are potentially once in a lifetime. Great. I mean, just caption those. And red squirrels.
Gray.
Anybody who spends
Great.
was it a gray squirrel?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Oh, it
so.
looked like a red squirrel to me. I was going to say red squirrels act like they own the woods if you spend any time in there. I mean,
This guy
grays maybe
sure
simple.
did.
Yeah,
The whole time we're watching this, I don't know if anybody's ever. I can't even remember the name of the movie. It was the one where the deer got his antler broke off. He was half doe, half buck. He was a duck, is what they called him. But I don't.
Oh yeah.
Off season or something like that.
Off season.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
And there was
Is
these
that the John
group of
Candy one from
squirrels
way
that
back?
had a. No, it wasn't.
Oh,
No,
it's
that
different.
was the
Oh.
Great Outdoors. This one's animated. There was a group of squirrels and they had Scottish accents, and they would just every time he'd go under this one specific tree, this group of squirrels would curse him out, and then they'd throw pine cones down at him. That's what this squirrel reminded me of, because it was like every time the marten would fall off, he'd chatter, like, "Come on." And then
He would. He'd chatter and almost like look at him
He's
like, "What are
taunted
you
him.
doing? Come on, let's go."
But
Let's
he
go."
never
fear.
went. If you look at our images, that squirrel never went off the smooth part of the tree, because he knew the marten, if he got up to the limbs, was going to run him down, because they can jump a lot further. So he stayed on the smooth part of the tree, and all the squirrel did was just go back and forth around the tree, because the marten kept slipping and falling off. He wasn't as agile on the tree, or didn't have the claw dexterity on that
Round
part of
round
the tree,
world
so the
we go.
squirrel just owned him.
Again. Ties into our closing song. That was your photo, Ron, that we put on the Wild and Exposed feed this week then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, because Jason hasn't. Yeah.
with the
Okay.
marten kind of
Just
peeking
saying.
around, yeah.
I need to
Yeah.
send you some. I know.
Yeah. It's all good. Wow, what an experience. So should we jump into some pro tips, or
Yeah,
I have
for
a pro
sure.
tip that's a question but it's so different than the storytelling. This has been fun to hear, and the snow was so pristine on your trip too, right? It looked like it
It
from
was,
the images
yeah.
and the videos, and so pristine that you just even couldn't tell how deep it was at times. And then
Sure
we
couldn't.
have a video with Ron up to his waist. He looks back.
Well,
Ron was only up to his waist because he got stuck.
Why
He was
can't-
on he was on a snow saddle, kicking his feet. He couldn't touch the ground.
My feet were not
Right.
touching the ground, yeah.
So Jason has sent this. When this podcast airs, I'll put it up on the Instagram story, and go watch it, because it's funny, because Ron looks all serious. He's taking pictures. He's got a very impressive lens, and then he turns and looks toward Jason filming and says that his feet are not on the ground. It's hilarious. Nice setting though. And then
Yeah.
Jason pans off for
Yeah.
the scene, and then there's a whole river valley, and there's a coyote. You could see the silhouette way out on the snow, and Ron
So
was
it
stuck.
wasn't the only time Ron got stuck in the deep snow.
No, the one, and it was the first day, and he got stuck,
It
and
was-
it wasn't a good situation to get stuck in, because
When
there
I
was a
got
big.
my bison image,
Yeah.
actually, I went, so just to kind of set the scene a little bit so people just don't think I'm nuts, which maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But this bison was coming up the road, and number one, I didn't want the road to be in the image, so I wanted to get a little foreground. So there was, obviously the snow on the edge of the road. I knew that was going to be blurred out if I shot wide open. So I dove over in the snow off the
Like
side
a
of the road.
somersault, like a ninja roll.
No, it was definitely
Oh.
not a ninja roll. It was more like a turtle that got stuck on his back kind of roll.
It's more like a pizza roll.
So I jumped off and I laid low on my back and basically had a little recliner in the snow so I could shoot and get that little foreground element that I wanted. Plus, the way the road didn't have any trees, so everything was open where the bison was. And the way the road turned, he was going to be coming straight at that spot. And so that's what I was thinking and why I jumped over there in the side. So there was a reason for it. But then as the bison gets closer, I'm like getting the shots that I've always dreamed of, right? Frosty, muzzled bison coming right at me. This is the shot.
It's on our Instagram feed.
You
sent
is.
that.
It is.
Yeah.
Yep. But as he starts getting closer, and the snow coach driver was like, "We need to move off." I'm like, "Well, yeah, that's great, but I can't move." So I kind of scrambled, and quite honestly, I probably should have just laid flat and just let him go on by, because I probably potentially created more of an issue trying to get out of there, flopping around, trying to turn over and get to my feet than I would have had I just laid there and everybody else had moved back. But the one thing that I was thinking is I didn't want to be in everybody's shot for the whole time either. But I probably should have just laid still and let him go on by. But he was close.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I could have laid there. I don't know if I could have laid there when a
Well, I don't
big
either,
old bull like
because
that walked by me.
He would have been about 5 feet.
Yeah.
If he'd have come by me. And I didn't feel great about that. So, but it turned out okay, and I got out ahead of him.
Ahead of him, so, well within the legal distance, and
yeah,
honestly,
for sure.
I mean, it wasn't an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I could not have reached back and petted him or anything like that. I was out.
No, you were out clean.
Ahead of him, and everybody else was back, moving back toward the van and getting ready to set up a shot. So, yeah, that was interesting. And then, the other one, the snow saddle thing, though, I thought I'm going to get a little bit closer to eye level with this coyote as he's coming up. And it was way ahead of him, probably 200 yards ahead of him. And for whatever reason, when I stepped off and sunk, I probably reacted. I don't remember reacting, but I probably did. And he kind of turned and veered back away toward the trees on the other side. And then he ended up going back toward the larger group. But that one, I have no idea how deep the snow was. I do know how steep that ridge is where I stepped off. So it could have been a long slide down to the bottom. And
yeah, it was steep right there.
Probably a half hour, 45-minute climb back up if in that much snow if I'd have gone all the way down.
Well, if you'd have gone all the way down, you probably would have ended up in the river too.
River.
So
yeah, it would have been a swim for sure.
Yeah.
But
that'll be on our Instagram story the day this comes out. That's a good little clip.
To Jason's credit, he did eventually help me get out of there.
Of course. Why would I? Yeah.
After he got the footage and laughed a little bit.
Just a tow rope onto the snow coach, put it in drive. Hang on, Ron.
Yeah, exactly.
There was one spot actually that turned us into landscape photographers. This kind of lone tree out by itself. And it's a
very popular landscape shot. You've seen
the most shot tree in the lower 48 maybe in the wintertime.
It's a neat shot. It really is.
It is a neat shot.
Now you got me wondering.
Put it in the show notes at least.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. You got me wondering which images you got that paid for your trip. That's awesome.
Bison, for sure.
The bison? Yeah. Yeah, that's way cool.
And I just called Mark. Was that yesterday?
Yes.
Because I want to do it as a triplet with the bison in the middle panel, larger, and then the smaller with the trees on the side panels. And I'm gonna sell those as well.
Just canvases, 3 vertical canvases.
Lends itself to that vertical canvas triplet. kind of
Cool.
image. So
Awesome.
Did you find a place to have that printed?
I called
Yeah.
Art Beat Studios, who we had
Okay.
on the show before. I
Yes.
called Art Beat, and Darren kind of talked me through what needs to happen to get that done.
Okay, this is interesting. So in this case, I've done this before, but not through a commercial. It was years ago, and I had it done locally, and I was able to be on site to kind of show them what I wanted. What happened was a person that wanted these 3 canvases sent me a picture from a site that did these, but it was some site overseas. It was really weird. And so I did some research and found a local shop would do it, so I could go in and say, this is how I wanted it. In this case with Darren at Artbeat Studios, and if you haven't listened to that podcast, go back as far as printmaking.
Yeah, it's a
it's
good
really
printmaking
informative. Yeah, great guys. And so what did he advise you? Are you making 3 separate files for 3
Basically,
canvases?
I am just going to make 3 separate files for them, and
Okay.
size them the way I want them, and then they will.
Interesting. Well, you got total control that way.
Yeah, for sure.
That's cool. Good to know. That's another pro tip from Ron before we even start the pro tips.
Yeah, he's full of them tonight.
I think that's only one, isn't it?
No, you had one before that.
Oh, change
The
coat.
tree.
Yeah.
The change the coat,
focus on the
depth
tree.
of field on the
That's
tree.
right. Focus on the tree. Increase your depth of field. So, all right, Mark, you're up.
I've got a couple of things. Oh, guys. All right. I have a question, but this is something cool that's different, and this is not necessarily a pro tip. This is something I discovered on picking up some new gear for this spring for wilderness trips that works for anybody who does anything wildlife nature photography where they could end up somewhere at night as far as headlamps. And I may be way behind on this technology, but I was in this big outdoor store and picking up some gear, and a headlamp there. I'm sure 3/4 of the audience is going to laugh when I say this, but you can charge it on a USB. You don't need batteries, and the price is good. And so the point of that is you don't have to buy the batteries, and it's a typical little headlamp. They have all different strengths of them, but then you've got your battery bank that you take on trips that force. I do it primarily for the action cameras or my iPhone, so that I can make sure I've got enough charge in the field that I can keep filming for YouTube, for B-roll, for just trip stuff. And so this would charge the headlamp. And this one, battery bank, I've talked about this many podcasts ago. It's solar as well, assuming you have sun. So it will recharge itself in the field if you're camping for many days. It's got a light on it too. Anyway, that was a cool little discovery. Side note, not really a full-on pro tip. Just the fact that you can get headlamps that are USB charged and you don't have to buy AAA batteries to run them. So I was excited about that. And I'll jump in. I've got 3 little things. There's a question that came in, as many do, on our Instagram, a direct message. So thank you for everybody who sends these in. I'm going to spin this into a bit of a pro tip as far as just telling the experience of my story, and the guys can throw in obviously whatever they like as well. This was from Paul Stiles on Instagram, and so his Instagram page can be found with just Paul Stiles. It's spelled Stiles. Paul wrote in to the Wild and Exposed Instagram message saying, "Hello, I have a question for everyone. How many of you have made a book of your own work? I think Mark said he made a moose book." Well, yes. Sorry, that's me. That's not his question. But for those who have made a book of your own photos, could you talk about the process and logistics? Did it cost a lot? Did you make any money on it? And or do you feel like you made an influential impact at all? Do you feel like it gave you much, if any, professional photographer, quote, street cred? So there's a little bit more there, but that's enough to develop a bit of a question. To answer the last part, definitely a big part of doing a book, if it's one that's sold to the public, is street cred. There's very few things historically that are as good a promotional piece of work And honestly, the general public, I'm not necessarily talking about photographers. I mean, photographers will always appreciate good quality imagery. I love seeing books from other talented photographers all over the place and collect them. So there's that. But the general public, if you've done a book historically, it's a big deal. And so it does always create, as we say, street cred that way, as Paul mentioned. And that is nowadays, one of the best aspects of doing a book is that promotional piece. Now, I'll try to go through this fairly quickly because it could be more in depth, but there's two ways to do a book. There's self-publishing it, and there's going through a publisher. And then there's, of course, the print and digital, but print is what we're going to focus on here. Now, self-publishing is something that we've talked about. Jason got into that many podcasts ago, and that there's so many places you can print your own book. It may just be one copy, it may be 5 copies, maybe you do 20 copies. It all depends on the page count and your budget and what company you upload, and you lay it out yourself. The software, for the most part, is very user-friendly. And that kind of book is something that is great for family, for friends. If maybe it's about a trip. Maybe you go on a trip with some friends and you make a book as keepsakes. Maybe it's for yourself to remember. I know one photographer on Instagram brought up that, if it's one of you guys, I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember who it was, but they do it based on that year's work. They've done a book. It was you, Jason? Mm-hmm. Right on. So like it does a book for 2020, 2019, just to show the highlights and what and it kind of is a great way to reflect on your photography over time too, right? So that's something all on its own, and that's something where you do a few books. Now, you can also create a book yourself, have a PDF made, or make it yourself if you work the software. It's not hard to find somebody who can make a PDF of a book with you rather inexpensively, and then send that to a company that can print higher volumes of book. And there are more and more people do this nowadays, and there's a greater profit margin if they sell when you do your own book. The challenge is you have to sell them. You have to distribute them yourself and get them out there. And that can be done now through social media. There was one fellow who did a great book in Quebec that I saw and he sold out in no time, I believe, from what he said. And people who do those kind of books, maybe they print 100 or 2, they're numbered, they're signed, they're priced accordingly. You're not going to spend $20 or $30 on that book. It'd be more, but it's a more elaborate piece of work. So for those that have significant social media followings, that's a channel that if one took the risk of paying to publish their own book through these printing companies, which there are many, then that's one avenue to do it. My books that I've done, and I'm there. I seriously am considering doing that in the near future myself. But historically, I've gone through publishers and still do, and definitely enjoy those relationships. But it's a different situation where you are coordinating with a publishing house. First of all, there's sending in the proposals. It's a matter of educating oneself to what publishing houses print the kind of books that you're imagining or that matches your aspirations of what you want your book to look like. Finding them and then sending them a very detailed email, just a knock on the door about what you want to do. Historically, it was I'd send a proposal out. And my first whitetail book I did in I think in 19. Yeah, I'm not going to say that. A while ago. And
it wasn't going to be one of those 1971 snow machine comments, right?
Oh no, not that long ago. I think it was my first whitetail book was in 1998, and I believe I sent that book proposal to 4 or 5 publishers before one said yes. And the first 4 were, nice letters back. It's not what they're doing or the direction they're going, or for whatever reason didn't want a single species book, or whatever the answer might have been. But then that 5th one, they were like, oh yeah, let's do this. So there's always that rejection part. It's a matter of finding those publishing houses. Then there's the contract and negotiation of what they envision the book will look like and what the photographer and author envisions the book will look like and whether that can be brought together. When a publisher prints a book, they pay for it. So they have influence on those variables. They distribute it, and the artist, creator, the photographer, author gets a royalty. And often there's an advance against royalty. It's not an advance just a pocket, it's against royalties of future books sold. And then there's a percentage royalty rate, which varies considerably. So does the advance vary considerably. To this day, there are significant advances, and then there are those that aren't as big in advance. But then one hopes the book sells really well. And at the end, it doesn't matter. If it sells out at, let's say, the first printing, the amount of the advance is negligible in the sense that it's the same dollar amount when the printing sells out, if it sells out. But there's less money to be made for the photographer or author through a publisher unless they have a great distribution network and can sell tens of thousands of copies or more. So there's that as well. There are all these different variables to consider. So it takes a lot of the stress off in the sense working with a publisher, because they have all that printing connections and distribution. But as far as what the book's priced at, as far as what the royalty rates are, those all have to be negotiated. And what the book looks like, the size of the book, is it going to be a trade paperback? Is it a hardcover? These variables. For the most part, the books that I've done, in all cases, the books I've done have been great experiences. The designers have been wonderful to work with and very efficient and fun in the sense that I've been able to select my own images and lay them out and crop and make suggestions that appeal to me that way. So those so to answer Paul's questions, there's more than one way to approach this, and it depends on how deep one's pocketbooks are. Does somebody want to spend $2,000 or more, $5,000 making a whole bunch of books to sell on their own? Or, is it a keepsake that you just do 10 for your family? And it's a fun experiment to do it that way too. I've done books on trips where I've taken a friend or two on a wildlife trip, and I've just summarized the trip in a book. And I think it was $50 or $60 for each book. I printed 3 of them, and they're still keepsakes that every couple of months I'll sit down in my office taking a break and we'll flip through to remember. So that's a fun step to do if you haven't done it. Get your feet wet a little bit with laying out a book and that idea, telling a story through images in a book. All that is relevant, especially when you propose it to a publisher. I mean, you have to have an outline, table of contents, a page count, a word count of what you imagine it to be. Is it mostly a photo book with captions, or is there text to describe all this? Those are all variables. But as in anything in business, it's just a matter of being smart about approaching people who do, or companies that do a product like you're imagining, and start with that and that with a proposal. If you're going that route with a publisher versus self-publishing. And again, it depends on one's ability to market their own work. If you have those channels and have the funds to support your own book, I know of, without naming names, I know of people that have done exceptionally well. It's not common, but done exceptionally well on their own books. And I think in a situation like that, if someone's self-published, it would be a matter of also looking for awards programs out there to enter one's book in that could get some acclamations or recognition to it that can be help promote it over time as well, and publicity that way too. Anyway, quick summary.
Yeah, and when I read Paul's question, my first question back was, or the first thing that I thought of was, it depends greatly on what you intend to do with it. Like you say, Jason, not to steal his thunder, but Jason talks about doing his best work at the end of every year. And I'm currently going through looking at my, top, trying to narrow it down to top 10, or top 12, but I've got it narrowed down to probably top 50 images from last year. And then, do something with that so that those are, you've kept those cataloged, and, you've kind of got them in a location that people can view them readily. So that's one type of book, and that's probably not going to get you a lot of street cred because the people that are going to see it are your friends and family. Unless you put it as create a coffee table book, put it out at a coffee shop or a breakfast restaurant somewhere people can get their hands on it and view your images. That might lead to some sales for you. But what Mark's talking about, that a book project, the reason that not a lot of people are successful is it is a huge endeavor. And I think when you dip your toe in it, you better plan on, I've never done it, but I think a minimum of a year once you start the project, and maybe longer depending on how ready you are. You might get to, we had Steve Mathis on the show, and he talked about how he'd worked for 7 years to gather all these great gray owl images, but he was waiting to do the book until he had the one that completed the story. And he'd, go back, listen to it. He tells about, the story of getting an image of great grays mating and why he waited for that to complete his book. And then he got it, book's out. So it can be a very long project, especially if you run into something like that. But I think it depends greatly, and what you have to ask yourself first is what you're intending to do with it. Like I said, if it's a coffee table type book and you're just going to get it out to some stores, coffee shops, by all means get after it, and the images will suffice. But if you're going to write, there's a lot of research that takes place. There's a lot of time and rewrites, getting it to an editor, somebody that you trust that can go through it and kind of help you with some ideas, all those kind of things. And I've just looked at writing kids books. That's not even, the scientific type books that like Mark has written on the whitetail and the moose with all the biological data. So it's a big endeavor.
And it's a highlight. It's highlighting for market potential a body of work. And as you point out, the moose book has a collection of images that were 20 years in the making. A lot of them might be in the 5 or 6 years prior to publishing, but the behavioral content, you just don't get that every day. So right. Some of those were 15, 20 years old. There are slide scans in that book because I just couldn't repeat the quality of those experiences at will. Mm-hmm. So they're very, maybe 10 in the book, but they're fine. But when it comes to making a proposal, if one's approaching publishers, the book has to be almost done. Typically, they're 1 to 2 years out on planning their launch for each spring fall line. So there's a bit of time. And with the moose book, I traveled a bit to highlight some of the subspecies. I went to Manitoba. I hadn't done moose there. It was fun to do that and explore a new area and a new subspecies for that. But so there is some time, but you want to have the vast majority of it ready at time of proposal, because if they want to move it up, that's exciting. You want to be able to step it up and go with it. The sooner the better. So, but I think there is a strong trend to self-publishing. Again, whether it's a 3 or 10 or 20 copies for personal gifts, just to show and to highlight a collection of one's photography, or whether it's a decision to print hundreds and market through social media or on foot, knocking at different booksellers. There are all kinds of venues you could sell a book at. And it's just a matter of doing that legwork too, and recognizing an audience. If monetary gain's important for the book, it has to appeal to a big audience. So, and anyway, there's a lot of detail to it, but it's fun stuff to think about. And if you have a body of work, I like what Jason does. I think that's great for the cost of it. Otherwise, we look at our devices. We're always posting on social media, so we're scrolling through whatever photos we have in our albums. But it's different than highlighting something like that, doing it by year, for instance. Cool question. Thanks, Paul, for sending that in.
Jason, how about you?
Yeah, maybe I'll just expand a little bit on what you guys said. But yeah, the way I do it is just really, again, I think one of the benefits is just seeing it in print. It really does make a difference. When you look at your images on the computer, they especially on a 27-inch monitor, they look pretty awesome. And when you see them on Instagram, they look okay. But when you see it in print, it just gives you a completely different feel. I've tried to do more of that, just getting some of my favorite images printed and hung in my house for some period of time, and then maybe offer them up for sale after a while, after I rotate them or something for cheap to somebody or whatever. But yeah, I really think less and less people are printing images, and less and less people are hanging images in their homes and things like that, right? So it's as to enjoy my own work, I think it's worth doing that. And it does make a great gift. I mean, my mom tells me every year that she'd be happy to have for her Christmas present one of my books every year. So that's moms, right? But but I will say too that I think as photographers, we all I think you end up going there at some point, just thinking about the fact that you are creating a body of work, and through those experiences you have in that. I mean, just to be honest, one of the things that's crossed my mind is, and I don't know if I'm disciplined enough yet, but I really want to start taking good field notes and making a diary of my adventures while I'm out photographing, to maybe at some point someday write a book about just, adventure, being out there and the adventures I've had. And I don't know if anybody will want to read it or not, and I don't really care. At some point, it's just a passion project, right? So, but it has crossed my mind, and I think it crosses a lot of our minds, but I don't know that I have the gumption to do it for a monetary gain, so to speak, or Mark has done well with his. I have a copy of his book, and a signed copy, I might add.
Well, thank you for ordering that.
Which is really cool, actually. I love it. It's an amazing. He did a really good job. We haven't met in
person yet. Is crazy, man. Yeah, it's.
I know. It's insane.
He avoids me all over the place.
Yeah. Yep, you're not invited to Yellowstone, But no, yeah. So I don't know. His question, does it give you notoriety? Was that kind of the key of his question?
Well, street credit.
Street credit, yeah.
Street cred, sorry.
With other photographers, but it opens. I send mine to my clients and stuff, and it's to have a body of work. It does help. It's just always there's just that fundamental belief that if somebody did a book, then they know that subject.
Sure.
It's like psychology that people just subscribe to, and especially if the book is well done and the images are good, then it holds up to that. It's a great promotional piece. I mean, there are many ways to promote one's work, but that's kind of a significant one in as far as there's a lot of effort put into it. And I think that resonates with some, but I wouldn't do it solely for that purpose. That's a nice benefit to doing it.
Understood. Yeah. Well, I would say if you guys want to know if Mark knows anything about moose, you should go out and buy his book, and you'll find out very quickly that he does.
Appreciate the pitch. Or come in the field with me and just hear me talk to them.
Yeah, there you go.
In places that's permitted, which most places I go, we can have a conversation.
Are you going to give us a moose call right now?
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah. Hey, moose!
That's great. I love it. I love it.
But yeah, I've got some good stories. That's an easy one.
Yeah.
Jason, how about your pro tip?
My pro tip. Well, so I'm gonna pull a Mike tonight since Mike's not here, and I'm gonna talk about some gear. But the problem I'm having with this gear is I'm having a hard time finding out exactly what it's called. It's an item that Small Rig makes, and I think Mike sent me the promotion on it when they were pre-ordering these things. But I don't know what to call it other than it's a photographer videography emergency kit, if you will. I don't know if we can see this.
Back it up just a hair. I think put it closer to your face. They're back just a hair. Right there.
Oh yeah, cool. All right, go to YouTube. Check this out, people.
Yeah. So We'll we'll try to find the name of this thing, but I can give you a model number and such, but it's essentially a metal plate that has a variety of different screws and the Allen wrenches and screw wrenches that you would need to be able to fix and replace different types of screws and that with your photography and videography equipment. So just another, one of those nice to have in the field if something goes wrong or you lose a screw or something happens. And I've been there. So I don't think this was very expensive. I think it was like $25 or something. And it's actually really heavy duty. It's, probably 1/4 inch thick aluminum, plate. I will say that just so everybody knows, the model number is an MD 3184. So yeah, that's my pro tip. Again, just something nice to have when you're in the field and things go wrong. It's very inexpensive, and it's an easy way to organize those kinds of screws. It fits nice in a bag because it's flat and
fix a tripod, fix a mount, fix
any of the above. Yeah. Yep.
How much was it?
I think it was like $25. It really wasn't that expensive. So
and
not
what's the brand again?
It's Small Rig.
Small
Sorry,
Rig.
yeah.
Small Rig.
Small
Yeah,
Rig.
okay.
Yep. Small Rig. No, a lot of folks know Small Rig. They make a lot of different products for.
I just bought a Small Rig cage for my R5 so that I can mount the external recorder on it, the Ninja 5. So I've got the external monitor, but it's also a recorder. I can put a 2 terabyte SSD on there and just get all the video I ever want to get. Don't have to worry about any overheating issues because the recording is going on the monitor itself.
Yeah.
So
that was impressive too. You sent a picture of that.
Good tools. Yeah.
It looked almost like from Terminator.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be.
I thought it was
on the camera.
Mini ball heads on it and stuff.
Yeah.
I thought I was envisioning a little GoPro on one of those heads or something, filming you while you're photographing.
Actually, those clamps is what Mike used to rig the GoPros when we did our boat trip in Alaska a couple years ago. That's what Mike used to rig the GoPros to the rail so that we could film.
I have pictures and footage from those.
Yeah,
I should probably
exactly. You can throw some of that on there.
Yeah, that was fun.
So,
great tip.
Mine is pretty simple, and it kind of goes back to what we just talked about. I kind of alluded to it already. And I think we talk about this a little bit every year, but go through your previous year's images before you get busy shooting, as the spring kind of ramps up with all the breeding seasons and that kind of thing, nesting seasons. Go through your images from the previous year. Always save your top 10, top 12, top 20 if you can't narrow it down. And then it gives you a starting point to look back the year before. Number one, to see growth. I think that's the biggest measuring stick that you can use. Your grandma or your mom used to make a mark on the wall to show you how much you'd grown since the last visit, that kind of thing. Looking at your previous year's images gives you an opportunity to look back and see how your images have grown, how you've grown artistically, technically, and or gives you an opportunity to identify what you want to change in the coming year. Every year I go back, look at the previous year's images, find out, what I'd like to shoot, and I kind of try to plan my year around that. We've talked about that plenty. But this year kind of turned into the year of the Shiras moose for multiple reasons, because number one, we were stuck photographing closer to home, so that work policies didn't allow air travel, and air travel was limited anyway. So I spent a lot of time shooting closer to home. I shot in southern Wyoming and western Wyoming, and then into southwest Montana as well, and Colorado. And it just gave me a lot of opportunities to photograph a species that I didn't have a lot of in my portfolio, and that definitely changed this year. And got some respectable animals and some different times a year, that kind of thing. So use it to identify where you want to spend your time and your efforts, but also photographically how you'd like to change or what you'd like to change in your shooting. Identify it first, and then research get a hold of somebody that whose work you might enjoy, and just find out how they shoot and what they look for, that kind of thing. In the field, that research early on in the field translates to being able to kind of pick your shot. It's kind of like that bison on the road. I saw what I wanted, that led me to where I needed to be, and then eventually led me to the shot. And it doesn't always work out that way, because sometimes they go a different direction, but that time it certainly did. And when it does, it does. You can put those images on the wall for sure. So that would be my pro tip for this week, since we're moving into the spring, but it's not really ramped up quite yet. So you still have time to do that.
It's funny, the conversation in today's podcast, it's almost like it's a new year. The more we've been referring to that, it's not like January, but I think, we're hoping to feel some ease of pressure with COVID, hopefully letting up, and then with spring coming, everybody just wants out. And I just kind of feel that with what we've been saying today. It's cool.
Yep.
All right, well, keep the questions coming in. We always appreciate hearing from you, and you can find more of our content at wildandexposed.com. The show notes for today's podcast, also links through the Explore page to all kinds of cool podcasts there, various guests that we've had, or other pro tip podcasts with just the Wild and Exposed crew. The store is also there, as we've talked about before. Michael Morrow worked so hard last fall, and there's a great variety of swag and stuff there. There's coffee mugs, there's hats, there's t-shirts of various designs, hoodies, stickers, you name it. And one of the reasons I bring it up is that helps us when you order, helps support our efforts by producing this podcast as well. So for those of you that have, much appreciated. Thank you. For those of you that haven't, check it out at wildandexposed.com, at our shop, the store there. And we have each ordered products, and the company that Mike set it up through, very highly reviewed, great quality content or materials, and everything that I've received and the guys have received, we're very happy with as well. So
Mark, before you kick it off full time, Jason has another announcement.
Okay.
From our sponsor, Precision Camera.
Yeah, we just got some really good news. Our awesome sponsor, Precision Camera, is offering to our Wild and Exposed listeners, if they log in to the website and schedule a virtual consultation, at the end of the consultation, they'll receive a coupon code for a free 16 by 24 fine art print, and that will also include free shipping. So if you haven't used that, no purchase necessary. If you haven't used that feature from Precision Camera, which is a unique feature that I've seen out there, go get you scheduled and get a virtual tour and a virtual consultation, and see if you can't get yourself a 16 by 24 fine art print. So thanks to Precision Camera for offering that up to the listeners.
Yeah, I'm doing that right now. You're gonna have to wait. Sorry, guys.
I'm gonna go log on right now.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. No idea.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And so I keep putting that up on our Instagram story. So for those of you that follow us on Wild and Exposed on Instagram, you'll frequently see the connection with Precision Camera. And we have an ongoing coupon code with them as well, $50 off of any $500 or more order through them. So if you are looking for equipment, and they do ship all across the country, the United States, I assume they do Canada as well, but then you have the duty stuff. But as far as anything in the United States, highly recommended, and something to check out, because you just get $50 off by putting in the Wild and Exposed. You'll see that in our Instagram stories. I typically put it up once or twice a week. So our podcasts come out each Tuesday. You can find more of our work also on Facebook in addition to Instagram. And on Fridays, we target Fridays for our YouTube version of each podcast, where you can watch us live and see the things that we talk about. Whenever you go there, please make sure to subscribe and give us a positive review, 5-star rating or thumbs up. Those also help us to gain traction in the busy world of podcasting or the busy arena of YouTube. And make sure to hit that bell so that you're notified when we put up future content. It's free and we keep it flowing. So get on board. We appreciate it. Guys, it's been great to see you. It's been too long since we've sat down together. I look forward to doing this again in the near future. We've got some great guests coming up in future weeks. Stay tuned, people. Until next time, you've been listening to Wild and Exposed Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
You've been listening to the Wild and Exposed Podcast. If you haven't yet, please give us a rating and a review. And make sure you're subscribed so that you'll get every episode we produce as soon as we drop it. And as always, thanks for tuning in.
We're gonna make it someday. Nothing's gonna get in our way. We will be the biggest band in town. Round and round the world we'll go.